With the WINN FM Newscast, I am Yulana Weeks. Featuring in our newscast locally, St. Kitts and Nevis's Prime Minister in United Nations address urges global unity amid rising conflicts. Defending champion WPC 466 Danicia Henry retains title at Independence Drill Competition. Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew receives the prestigious MIPAD Lifetime Achievement Award. Regionally, Auditor General in Guyana lacks capacity to audit offshore activities. Antigua-Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown amps up calls for global action on climate and conflicts. Internationally, U.S. State Department says it will cancel the visa of the Colombian president. And CNN's Jeremy Diamond presses senior Hamas official Ghazi Hamad on his responsibility for Palestinians suffering in Gaza and the tens of thousands killed. Now, the news in detail. Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis, Dr. Terence Drew, delivered a strong address at the United Nations General Assembly on Saturday, September 27, 2025, emphasizing the urgent need for peace and stability amid global conflicts. Speaking to world leaders, he expressed a deep concern about the rising tensions and security challenges affecting nations worldwide, calling for collective action to promote dialogue and cooperation. The leader highlighted unrest in the Caribbean region, specifically referencing the dispute between Venezuela and the United States of America. He urged the parties involved to engage in diplomatic discussion and resolve differences peacefully to prevent escalation and the destabilization of the peace that the Caribbean has long been known for.
Historically in our region, disputes have been resolved through dialogue. As such, we encourage dialogue between our two dear friends, the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela and the United States of America, to ensure that our region remains a zone of peace. We are not asking for pity or imposition. We are asking, therefore, for partnership, for tools to block the flow of guns and the flow of funds that fuel violence, for initiatives that create opportunities so that young men and women find purpose in productive work rather than perilous pursuits. Partnership, not pity. Prevention, not punishment.
The worsening situation in Haiti was also at the center of the Prime Minister's address. He said political instability, gang violence, and humanitarian challenges are what the Haitians continue to suffer, and the world must not turn a blind eye to the state of affairs.
Distinguished delegates, our region remains incomplete while Haiti suffers. Haiti's struggle is our shame if we do not respond with resolve. The people of Haiti carry within them an extraordinary history of emancipation and courage. Yet that history has been marred by instability, natural disasters, and foreign interventions that have too often deepened dependency and deprivation rather than delivered dignity. St. Kitts and Nevis and the Caribbean community welcome the commitments of partner states, notably the Kenya-led multinational security support mission and the backing of the OAS and other regional actors to help restore security and to assist in rebuilding Haitian institutions. But security is only the first step. We must invest in Haiti's health, education, agriculture, infrastructure, and governance. We must help rebuild markets so that merchants trade rather than flee. We must help rebuild schools so that children learn rather than languish. We must help rebuild hospitals so that mothers are treated rather than traumatized. Haiti must be allowed to write and lead its own restoration story, and the international community must be a steadfast partner, not a script writer.
On the global stage, Prime Minister Drew listed several countries where tensions continue to escalate. He highlighted the ongoing dispute between Palestine and Israel, where the humanitarian situation has been deeply troubling. He called for meaningful dialogue between the two sides, emphasizing that peace could only be achieved through mutual understanding and respect for human rights.
St. Kitts and Nevis therefore calls for an end to the anguish caused by the horrific genocide that is unfolding in Gaza. We categorically condemn this affront to humanity, for which there must be accountability. We urge for an immediate and unconditional ceasefire for the protection of civilians, of children, of women, of the vulnerable, of the weak. And we also call for the release of hostages and for the restoration of basic necessities and humanitarian access. International law, conscience and human decency demand no less. Further, the path to lasting peace between the state of Israel and the state, yes, the state of Palestine, one that guarantees human rights, dignity, and security for all, lies in the implementation of a two-state solution.
While acknowledging the complexities of these global conflicts, Prime Minister Drew urged the United Nations to reform its structures so that there would be inclusion of smaller nations in decision-making as they are directly impacted by global instability.
The time has come to reshape the United Nations itself, to reform its structures so that they reflect the realities of our modern world. The Security Council, the very body charged with maintaining international peace and security, cannot be credible if it excludes representation from the regions most vulnerable to the threats of our time. Africa, Latin America, and small island developing states such as those in the Caribbean. To secure a world of peace, those who suffer the sharpest edges of insecurity must have a seat at the table where peace is forged.
The Prime Minister's address was met with applause by the august body, reflecting a shared desire among the United Nations member states for peace to reign. The annual Independence Drill Competition brought excitement and precision to the Bay Road in Bastille as 22 officers from 5 uniformed groups competed fiercely for the top spot. The Independence Drill Competition, organized by the Department of Creative Economy, featured participants from the St. Kitts and Nevis Fire and Rescue Services, the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, His Majesty's Prison, the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, and the St. Kitts Nevis Defence Force Cadets Corps. The event showcased sharp discipline, synchronized movements, and exceptional teamwork from all participating teams. This year's competition saw last year's champion, WPC 466 Denicia Henry from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, successfully defending her title, delivering a flawless routine that impressed both the judges and the spectators. Her commanding presence and seamless execution solidified her position as one of the island's top drill performers. Cupping second position was PC Dalvin Williams from the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, and in third place was Javed Richardson of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. Acting Defence Force Commander Coyote Sutton presented those awards. The female with the best turnout was WPC Denicia Henry. The male with the best turnout was PC Dalvin Williams. The best turnout awards were sponsored and presented by retired Major Leroy Percival. The officers executed their drill performances in 4 separate batches. The best drill performer in Batch 1 was WPC Denicia Henry. In Batch 2, PC Dalvin Williams. In Batch 3, WSO Myrtle Daniel of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority, and in Batch 4, AD Daniel of the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force Cadet Corps. The awards were presented by Force Chaplain Erickson Cumberbatch. Advisor in the Ministry of National Security Dr. Edwin Powell presented the awards to the top 3 teams of the competition. In first place was the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, and tying in second were the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force Cadet Corps and the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority. All 5 teams were commended for their high level of preparation and discipline, noting that the standard of competition continues to rise each year. All participants received a medal, while the winners of each category were presented with trophies and plaques. The scores of spectators celebrated the defending champions' remarkable back-to-back victory and also witnessed history as WSO Myrtle Daniel of the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority participated in the drill alongside her twin sons from the St. Kitts and Nevis Defence Force Cadet Corps. The annual drill competition serves as a platform to promote promote discipline, teamwork, and national pride among members of the various uniformed organizations. Organizers expressed gratitude to sponsors, officials, and supporters whose contributions made the event possible. Plans are already underway to make next year's event even more exciting and competitive. On September 26, 2025, St. Kitts and Nevis' Prime Minister, Dr. Terence Drew, was presented with the Most Influential People of African Descent MIPAD 2025 Lifetime Achievement Award. In accepting the award, the Prime Minister expressed a deep gratitude, noting that the recognition was not just a personal achievement, but a reflection of the collective efforts of the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
I don't think I've ever worked for a for-profit organization. My contributions have always been to communities, and especially to those who need help the most. Even my own medical practice is to render a lot of free care to those who couldn't afford a medical doctor. And so my extension to politics is politics not as a means to have power, but as a means to serve and to help those especially who most need that help.
The award was presented during a special ceremony on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. It was attended by dignitaries, government officials, and international representatives. Organizers of the event praised the Prime Minister's leadership and service, highlighting his efforts in advancing the country's development, promoting unity and collaboration with Africa, and inspiring future generations.
We are pleased to present this award to the Honorable Dr. Terence Michael Drew. This is acceptance of the office as the fourth Prime Minister of St. Kitts and Nevis to ensure that young people are recognized and provided adequate opportunities to advance themselves. He is a man committed to the growth and development of the people of the Twin Island Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis and the advancement of regional integration and relationships with Africa and its diaspora.
Regionally, Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Honorable Gaston Brown, is repeating a dire warning that small island developing states remain highly vulnerable to climate change and an unfair global financial system. The head of government was addressing fellow leaders at the United Nations in New York on Friday, calling for global action on climate financing as well as thorny geopolitical tensions. Elisha George of ABS reports.
Prime Minister Brown devoted most of his UN General Assembly address to repeating these concerns, saying they continue to block economic growth for island nations.
Finance must be fair before a storm hits. Right now, the inequitable international financial system makes the most vulnerable countries pay the highest price just to protect themselves. These climate disasters force us to borrow expensively to rebuild. Consequently, debt swells and resilience stalls.
Brown also highlighted public health issues, including the rising burden of non-communicable diseases and the need to address mental health.
Mental health is a human right. Sanity is the people's right. When we invest in mental health, people recover and re-enter community and work. As a consequence, countries rise. Antigua and Barbuda is committed to working on a United Nations resolution treating mental health as essential to development.
Turning to geopolitics, he warned that tensions between the United States and Venezuela put the Caribbean at risk of being drawn into conflict.
Whereas Antigua and Barbuda stands ready to work with all partners against traffickers, we are concerned with the buildup of military assets, including a nuclear submarine, indicating the possibility of military conflict. We remind everyone that our hemisphere should be respected as a zone of peace, not a theater of military conflict.
He urged world leaders to take decisive action and called for a fair and orderly phase-out of fossil fuels, stronger funding for adaptation and disaster recovery, and the adoption of the Multidimensional Vulnerability Index to help small states access concessional financing. He also closed by renewing his call for an end to the U.S. embargo on Cuba and a global fund to help restore stability in Haiti. Elisha George for ABS News.
Though it has been building its capacity in the oil and gas sector, the Office of the Auditor General still lacks the capacity to audit offshore activities in the Stabroek Block as oil production continues to rise. The Auditor General's office has instead been redirecting its focus to agencies like the Ghana Revenue Authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Ghana Georgian Mines Commission that are responsible for monitoring the production of oil and gas and the revenues received. Auditor General Deodat Sharma admitted to reporters on Thursday that his office lacks the expertise and human resources necessary to audit offshore activities, noting that tremendous human resources are needed, from petroleum engineers to legal experts. He said the audit office is nowhere close to achieving that level of capacity.
Unfortunately, I have not seen any of those reports to date. So I'm still awaiting the final report.
U.S. oil giant ExxonMobil is currently producing about 650,000 barrels of oil per day on the Stabroek Block. However, with the recent startup of a fourth FPSO, the One Ghana FPSO, the company anticipates growing production to more than 900,000 barrels of oil per day by the end of the year. In 2024, ExxonMobil recorded $1.25 trillion in operating profit before tax. That figure represents a 66.7% increase in profit before tax when compared to the $752.7 billion made in 2023. Its net income stood at $995.1 billion at the end of 2024. Guyana, on the other hand, received $2.6 billion in oil revenues and royalties in 2024. Despite the ramping up of oil production, the first audit of expenses declared by ExxonMobil and its co-venturers for the period 1999 to 2017, which was conducted by IHS Markit, has not been finalized, with $214 million in cost recovery still in dispute. The second audit, which examined the costs incurred between 2018 and 2022, reviewed $7.2 billion in declared expenses. However, $65.1 million remains in dispute. As of June, the third audit, covering the period 2021 to 2023, was being reviewed by the Ghana Revenue Authority. The Auditor General said he is still to receive copies of the three audits conducted to date.
In terms of the oil and gas sector, we only have about 3 or 4 staff presently. As I said, I have to get this approved by the Public Accounts Committee. I think the last Public Accounts Committee understand that what I need now, although it was rejected. It was about 8 or 9 members that I wanted into that section. So that will go to the new Public Accounts Committee.
But Mr. Sharma said he is still hopeful that in the future, the Audit Office would have the capacity to conduct the audits. In the interim, Auditor General Sharma said the Audit Office is building capacity in the oil and gas sector. He said a request for a total of 9 staff members for the Oil and Gas Department was declined by the Public Accounts Committee.
But the actual auditing in terms of the oil and gas sector, I cannot audit what is happening out there. It will involve legal people, many engineers. No, I cannot do that. So what I will do, I will audit in the sectors that are responsible to monitor what is happening out there. Like the Ghana Revenue Authority, presently I'm auditing that.
Together with members of Parliament, officers of the Audit Office underwent training on auditing the extractive industries, in particular the oil and gas sector. That training was facilitated by the Canadian Audit and Accountability Foundation.
Internationally, Jeremy Diamond presses senior Hamas official Ghazi Hamad on his responsibility for Palestinians suffering in Gaza.
The history did not begin on October 7. We spent 78 years under the occupation, under the humiliation, under oppression, under repression, under killing, under displacement. Now why a war just focus on October 7?
But before October 7th, Israel had never unleashed this level of death and destruction on Gaza before. How can you look at me with a straight face and tell me that you accept no responsibility whatsoever for what has happened in the 2 years since.
What is the option is left for the Palestinians to do? You know, this is the first time that Palestinians have shown sacrifice in this Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
What gives you the right to decide it's a price worth paying? That child can die. It's okay. Because it's in order to fulfill our resistance.
As Hamas, we are fighting for the interests of the people. We don't want our people to be killed. We don't want our people to suffer more and more. I think now, look, you know what is the benefit of October 7 now? Now, when the award now, if you look to the General Assembly yesterday, when about 194 people opened their eyes and looked to the atrocity, to brutality of Israel, and all of them, they condemned Israel. We waited for this moment for 77 years in order to open their eyes to say that there is occupation, there is suffering of the Palestinian people, and we should end this occupation.
Let me show you the words of your people. Okay, these are people in Gaza, and I want you to hear, because your own people in Gaza say that you do have responsibility for the situation there. I'd like to show you this.
سألتنا لحماس أنه كفى مقامرة ومغامرة بنا. كفاكم، يعني أنتم منفصلون عن الواقع، خاصة قيادة حماس الموجودة خارج غزة.
I know. I have seen.
This is not it. There's more.
I have seen this video.
Sir,
yes.
There is more.
I have seen this video.
I would like you to. There are 3 people here. I would like you to hear their voices.
I know people are suffering. There are some people blame Hamas.
Why will you not listen to the voices of Palestinian people in Gaza?
Look. I know this is, but look, this is not the whole story. I know because this is because of the Israeli crimes in the Gaza Strip, and we will never surrender.
The U.S. State Department says it will cancel the visa of Colombian President Gustavo Petro over what it calls his reckless and incendiary actions in New York. Petro stood on a city street on Friday urging U.S. soldiers to disobey the orders of President Trump and obey the orders of humanity.
Tiene que ser más grande que el de los Estados Unidos. Por eso, desde aquí, desde Nueva York, le pido a todos los soldados del ejército de los Estados Unidos no apuntar contra la humanidad sus fusiles. Desobedezcan la orden de Trump. Obedezcan la orden de la humanidad.
Colombia's Caracol Radio reports that Petro was already heading back home when the State Department made its announcement. The Colombian leader was in New York for the UN General Assembly. US delegates walked out as Petro spoke on Tuesday. He called for a criminal investigation against Donald Trump over this month's deadly attacks in the Caribbean on boats that the White House says were carrying drugs.
You are listening to WINN FM 98.9 Headline News. In our top stories, nationally, defending champion WPC 466 Danicia Henry retains title at Independence Drill Competition. Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew receives the prestigious MIPAD Lifetime Achievement Award. Regionally, Auditor General in Guyana lacks capacity to audit offshore activities. Antigua-Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown amps up calls for global action on climate and conflicts. Internationally, U.S. State Department says it will cancel the visa of the Colombian president. And CNN's Jeremy Diamond presses senior Hamas official Ghazi Hamad on his responsibility for Palestinians suffering in Gaza and the tens of thousands killed. Thank you for listening.